Senator, happy Monday. I think I actually saw a couple of rays of sunshine this weekend. I don't know if anybody else was fortunate enough to see that. That's good. That's good. All right, the time for convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. At this time, I would like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit our chamber. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 53rd District, who's also got the chaplain of the day.
Mr. President, it's a beautiful day inside this building. The men and women of the state Senate are ready to do battle for the people of Georgia. And as you mentioned, I'll be on my best behavior since I have the chaplain of the day today. So, a couple of moments in history. Former Governor Zell Miller, a great governor and state and U.S. Senator and state senator, was born in Young Harris on this day in 1932. And also, the senator from the 7th District told me this is one of his favorite days. It's a World Bartender Day. So thank you for the senator from Ocilla. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. I'd invite all senators who have bills or resolutions to introduce to please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 417 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to physicians, assistants, and others so as to revise provisions relating to criminal background checks for certain
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 418 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 5 of Chapter 9 of Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Georgia State Indemnification Fund so as to revise when indemnification shall be paid in instances.
Public Safety.
Senate Bill 419 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 51 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding torts so as to provide for presumption against liability for certain businesses that are open
Insurance and Labor.
Senate Bill 420 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 26225 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to licensing of food sales establishments so as to direct the Department of
Health
Agriculture.
and Human Services.
Senate Bill 421 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to elementary and secondary education so to provide for a certification program for sustainable whole child
Education and Youth.
Senate Bill 422 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Stonecrest into DeKalb County. Approved.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 423 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 16561 of the OCGA relating to hazing so as to provide an expanded definition of hazing to amend
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 424 by Senator Beach of the 21st. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 6 of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to the Certificate of Need program so as to require general cancer hospitals to provide at least 3%.
Regulated industries.
Senate Bill 425 by Senator Harper of the 7th. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to reconstitute the Ocilla-Irwin County Industrial Development Authority, approved May.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 426 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 9 of Title 12 of the OCGA relating to air quality so as to provide for the reporting of any unpermitted release of ethylene oxide to the Environmental Protection Division.
Natural Resources.
Senate Resolution 791 by Senator Jones of the 22nd and others. A resolution supporting the creation of a state veteran cemetery in Augusta, Richmond County, Georgia, and for other purposes.
Veterans.
Senate Resolution 792 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. A resolution recognizing Mr. Richard L. Jackson and dedicating an interchange in his honor and for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 793 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. A resolution creating the Joint Private Financing of Infrastructure Study Committee and for other purposes.
Rules.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 487 by Representative Bonner of the 72nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 6, Chapter 3, Title 38 of the OCGA relating to the Disaster Volunteer Relief Act so as to authorize certain employees of state agencies to be
Public
granted.
Safety.
House Bill 780 by Representatives Perkle of the 155th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 1634 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to powers and duties of state properties commission generally so as
Government
to allow
oversight.
House Bill 826 by Representative Watson of the 172nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Meigs in Thomas County, Georgia, and Mitchell County,
State and
Georgia.
local Government.
House Bill 921 by Representative Bruce of 61st and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of South Fulton in Fulton County, Georgia, approved April 26, 2016, as amended so as to revise provisions regarding the
State
city.
and local government.
House Bill 923 by Representative Corbett of the 174th, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act providing for the compensation of the Board of Education of Clinch County, approved March 27th.
State and local government.
House Bill 924 by Representative Rogers of the 10th and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act to create a Board of Commissions of Roads and Revenue for Happersett County, approved February 13th.
State and local government.
House Bill 933 by Representative Nix of the 69th and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide a homestead exemption from Troup County School District ad valorem taxes for educational purposes, the amount
State
of 10.
and local government.
House Bill 935 by Representative Estration of the 104th and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act creating the Recorder's Court of Gwinnett County, approved March 27, 1972, as
State and
amended.
local government.
House Bill 944 by Representative Dukes of the 154th, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act changing the method of selecting the members of the Board of Education of Miller County, approved March 21st, 1968.
State and local government.
House Bill 945 by Representative Dukes of the 154th, a bill to be titled an act to amend an act creating a Board of Commissioners in and for Miller County, approved March 29th, 1983.
State and local
That
government.
completes order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees, please.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Veteran, Military, and Homeland Security has under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 316, due pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Thompson of the 14th District Chair. That completes order, Mr. President.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 337 by Senator Thompson of the 14th and others. Invasion of privacy, prohibition against the transmission of photography depicting nudity, including falsely created videographic or still images. Senate Bill 351 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others. Secretary of State, non-binding, advisory referendum election, continue the advancement of time from standard time to daylight saving time, provide. Senate Bill 352 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others. Online provider directories, certain coverage requirements concerning providers that become out of network during a plan year, provide. Senate Bill 370 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Public utilities and public transportation, compliance with certain safety and permit requirements, electric easements are utilized for broadband services, provide. Senate Bill 371 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Department of Transportation officers, state investment in railways and railroad facilities and equipment, provide. Senate Bill 373 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. Nonprofit corporations, directors and officers of electric membership corporations and foreign electric cooperatives, provisions, change. Senate Bill 377 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others. Inspections, number of required annual elevator inspections, reduce. House Resolution 935 by Representative Tanner of the 9th and others. Georgia Commission on Freight and Logistics, create. That completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th.
Mr. President, I'd like to excuse the senator from the 8th for business outside of the chamber.
Without objection, the senator from the 8th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th for business outside the chamber.
Can you say that district one more time?
Senate District 26.
26. Without
sir.
objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 28th.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 27th.
Without objection, the senator from the 27th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Just chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the A switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. I am wide open for you, Mr. Mullis. Bring your guests. I've already expressed my condolences to your chaplain about you. You got a special place in heaven. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. It's now time for a morning devotional, and I'd like to ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Also ask that the doorkeepers secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 53rd District to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance today and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you join me in honoring our country, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And help me honor our state, please. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be with you on this beautiful day inside here. It's a little gloomy outside. I'm glad to introduce a friend of mine who is a chaplain of the day. His name is Joel Sutherland, and Joel is a pastor of Peavine Baptist Church in Northwest Georgia in the community of Rock Spring, not Rock Springs, there's no S. It also sits in Walker County at the county line of Catoosa County. And I would say the members of that church is far wide and spread to many areas in Northwest Georgia. In the past 3 years, the Peavine Church has grown by 90%. It is now averaging about 1,600 every Sunday worship service. Joel holds a master's degree in leadership from the Liberty University, and also serves as national church strategist for the Southern Baptist Convention. He is joined by his wife, Sherry. If you would, please give her a hand, Sherry Sutherland. She's a wonderful lady and does a lot of work in the community as well. And they have two grown daughters, Savannah, who lives in the city of Atlanta, and Michaela, who lives in Rock Spring. They're also proud grandparents, too, of Jackson. So if you would, please give your attention to Mr. Sutherland.
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you to the Lieutenant Governor for having me, and my Senator, Jeff Mullis, for the invitation. And contrary to popular belief, I will let you know, he does know a preacher, at least one. And I've been here 15 minutes, and it's been up for much debate that Jeff knows a preacher or has actually been to a church, and he has. He comes often to Peavine. So thank you for the invitation. Here's what I want to do. I want to read a Bible verse and tell a story, and I'll be done. The Bible says in Luke 12:48, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from the one who's been entrusted with much, even more will be expected." Jesus was making a point to all those who are in leadership and to those of us who carry leadership responsibilities now. He was making this comment, this observation, that gifts bring responsibilities. He lays out two verbs that carry the same idea. One, those who have been given much. When the authorities of the affairs of men have been given to us, whether spiritual or physical, there is a certain expectation with that gift. Or he says those who are entrusted with much. It carries the idea in the Greek of the person who held another person's money. It carried with it an extraordinary amount of trust to do what was right with that money. When you're in that leadership position in life, you are as a senator, I am as a pastor, there are some expectations with that gift. The Bible says much will be required. You'll understand this as a senator. The word means to seek after or strive. It indicates that the people you serve will seek after you to do much with the gift of leadership that's been entrusted to you. And then it adds a statement that's kind of a catch-all. Even more will be expected. They will do even greater things, meaning that as a leader, our integrity, our values, our commitment must be the highest. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the high calling of leadership, of the leadership positions we hold today, tell us that we have been given much and much is expected. And those you lead and the God we serve expect a return on their investment. As a matter of fact, the Bible would indicate this. We're not to meet expectations. We are to exceed expectations, knowing that we are accountable for the gift given to us. And the best way I can illustrate that is a story with my daughter. I have 2 grown children now, 2 girls, and basketball was our family sport. They both played through high school. My oldest daughter went to college to play basketball. And one day, my middle school daughter, Michaela, was on a 3-day out-of-town tournament, and the last day was Saturday, and we couldn't go to the tournament, but we were picking her up on Saturday after the watching games all day. And so before she left me on Thursday, she came to me and she said, "Dad, I need some money." And I opened my wallet, and the most dreaded thing happened when I opened my wallet. The only bill I had in my wallet was a $100 bill. And I pulled it out and I handed it to her, and I told her what all good parents tell a teenage daughter when you hand them a $100 bill. "I want my change back." That's exactly right. So you fast forward till Saturday. We watch games all day long. My wife and I go to pick her up after the last game. It's late at night on a Saturday. She and a friend are riding home with us. We can find one restaurant open, and it's a Chili's. And we walk into Chili's, and as we're waiting to go to a table, my daughter starts with the explanations. She said, "Dad, I had to spend some of the $100. I said, I know you did, baby. I know you did." And by this time, we've sat down at the table. And she said, "Well, Dad, but you don't understand. I had to buy food for me, and then I forgot some kind of spray for my hair. I had to go to Walmart and get that. And then there was another girl that didn't. She was supposed to bring some kind of barrettes for her hair. And then, Dad, there was another girl whose parents didn't give her enough money. And you being the Christian father, I know you are." And so she's beside me at Chili's. My wife is across from me. The friend's over here. And while she's giving me all these excuses, she's reaching into her bag and she's dumping wads of money on the table. And I'm just going through trying to sort it because it's all discombobulated, as I would say. And I'm separating out 1s and 5s and 10s. No 20s were left in it. And I'm just sitting there counting it all. And I'm stacking it up. And I counted it all. And I said, "Michaela, there's a problem here." And Michaela said, "Dad, I have told you I had to buy her barrettes, lunch, food, this, that, spray, stuff." I said, "I know, Michaela." She said, "But Dad, I told you not to fuss." I said, "I'm not fussing at you, baby. Here, we have a problem." She said, "Dad, listen, I don't want to hear it." And I said, "Michaela, we have a problem. You just laid $117 on the table for me." And she said, "Dad, I don't know where the money went." I said, "Baby, you're missing the point of what Dad is trying to say." I said, "Did you take some of your money with you as well?" To which she said, "Oh, I didn't take any of my money. I emptied it all because I didn't want to spend any of my money while I was down there." I said, "Well, baby, did you knock off a 7-Eleven? What did you do?" She said, "Dad, I don't, she was confused." And I said, "Baby, I'm trying to make the point. There's $117. It just wasn't registered with her. My wife and this friend are talking, and she finally appeals to her higher power, and she looked at her mom, and here was her exact words. She said, 'Mom, Dad's getting me in trouble over the money.'" And Sherry, my beautiful wife, saw an opportunity to jump to my side. It's hard for Mama to take Dad's side against 2 girls, but she saw the opportunity. She had not been paying attention at all. And she said, "KK, if you don't stop doing this with money, we're not going to give you any more." To which I grew wide-eyed and said, "Are you joking? I'm about to write her a $1,000 check. It's the best 3-day return on an investment I've ever received." And know what you're thinking? Where'd the $17 come from? It's not $17. It's $17 plus some spray, some meal, some hair barrette, some bow, some whatever. And to this day, we have no explanation whatsoever. I just know I gave her $100, and she gave me back. You say, "Yeah, I took it. Yeah, I took it. For the stress and agony of having to put up with it, I took the $17. Can I say this? That's what the people we serve are looking for. That's what God is looking for. That we'll give him a return on the gifts that have been given us. May at the end of our days, may we all be found just as faithful. Knowing we are given much, let us give back much as well. Let me pray. Father, we have been entrusted with leadership. It's a gift that has been given to us, whether a senator or a pastor, that has been given to us by the people we serve, and it's a gift that has been given to us by God Almighty. And so, Lord, help us not to take that lightly, but to take the gift that has been given to us, and may we use it. May we use it for your glory. May we use it for your honor. May we use it to serve the people we serve. And, Lord, I pray that at the end of our days, that may you and those we serve look back and say, they were given much, but they did much with it. And so, Lord, help us keep in mind, to whom much is given, much shall be required. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. We have a number of special guests with us today and that we'd like to recognize. I'd like to ask the Secretary to read the resolution for our first set of special guests today.
Senate Resolution 755 by Senator Ginn of the 47th and others. A resolution recognizing and commending the Georgia Studio and Infrastructure Alliance as representative for the tens of thousands hardworking citizens in the state of Georgia's film and television industry and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Studio and Infrastructure Alliance was founded in 2014 as an independent, nonprofit organization with a mission to be a collaborative voice for Georgia studios and support businesses to communicate, educate, and advocate for long-term sustainability of the state's film and television industry. And whereas the Georgia Studio and Infrastructure Alliance is working in collaboration with the Georgia Department of Economic Development on a new website to highlight and share these success stories. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the Georgia Studio and Infrastructure Alliance to celebrate the thousands of Georgians who are working and have opportunities in the film and television industry in the state of Georgia and extend best wishes for future success. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Sorry. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 47th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Governor. Said I've never seen one of our guests jump so bad. Said we might have to get you to slow, easy pitch. Easy pitch. Said good morning, colleagues. Said for me, I wanted to present this resolution because of the impact it has in Georgia. Said when we start looking at our film industry, said there's a lot of people out there building sets, making the scenes that we do here in Georgia a reality. So, Ms. Beth Talbot, if you would, I want you to address our group. I think everybody in here has on their desk today a nice little book that shows you some of the lives that you impact here by making Georgia the Hollywood of the nation. Said so, Ms. Talbot, I'll ask you to make a few comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Ginn. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, Senate members. Thank you so much for having us here today. So about 3 years ago, the Georgia Studio and Infrastructure Alliance started collecting stories about people that lived and worked in the entertainment industry here in Georgia. And about 2 years ago, we started saying, let's put these stories together in a book. We have them all on the internet, but let's put them together in something concrete that we can all just look at. And we talked about it, and last fall we went, okay, now we're gonna do it. And thanks to a wonderful group of sponsors, a lot of them who are up in the gallery here supporting us today, we were able to produce about 65 stories of We Are Georgia Film. And we've got people all over the state, every corner, that are working in this industry. It impacts their lives. They're raising their families here. Their children are going to school here. They're affecting the economy in the state. And because of what Georgia has done for the entertainment industry, there are other states all over the country now that are trying to copy what we're doing and trying to get in on this. And we just can't thank all of you in the Senate enough for your support and to continue this great business in our state.
Thank you, Ms. Talbot. Let's give our film industry a round of applause. And Governor, if it'd be appropriate, I'd like Ms. Talbot to let her have the gavel for one swing. Said to see if she can make you jump. Ms. Talbot said let me present the resolution, and if you would take a swing at the gavel and get even with our Lieutenant Governor. All right.
Sorry about that. We've got some more special guests with us today that we'd definitely like to recognize. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 709 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Georgia Supreme Court Justice Robert Benham upon the grand occasion of his retirement and for other purposes. Whereas Justice Robert Benham has been long recognized by the citizens of this state for the vital role that he has played in state government and his deep personal commitment to the welfare of the citizens of Georgia. And whereas during his impressive and accomplished career, Justice Benham has served as Special Assistant Attorney General, President of the Bartow County Bar Association, where he served for 2 terms, and chairperson of the Governor's Commission on Drug Awareness and Prevention. And whereas Justice Benham has served with honor and distinction with the Georgia Supreme Court, and his vision and unyielding commitment to justice and law will be sorely missed upon the occasion of his retirement. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Georgia Supreme Court Justice Robert Benham for his efficient, effective, unselfish, and dedicated public service to the state of Georgia, congratulate him upon the grand occasion of his retirement, and extend the most sincere best wishes for continued health and happiness. Senate Resolution 708 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Thomas L. Coleman for his many outstanding contributions made to the citizens of Georgia and for other purposes. Whereas Dr. Coleman recently served as Chief of Staff to Chief Executive Officer Burrell Ellis, DeKalb County, Georgia. And whereas Dr. Coleman has provided an extensive service to the citizens of Georgia, having served for over 18 years as the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Juvenile Justice. And whereas in 1991, Dr. Coleman was appointed by Governor Zell Miller to become the Director for the Georgia Department of Highway Safety. He served until 1995 and was honored by Governor Miller as one of his most important appointments of his administration. And whereas Dr. Coleman serves on several boards, including as Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of Georgia Piedmont Technical College, Board of Juvenile Justice, DeKalb County Housing Authority, and the Richard L. Barkley Educational Endowment Incorporated, and Hillcrest Church of Christ. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Dr. Thomas L. Coleman for his many outstanding contributions made to the citizens of Georgia, and extend the most sincere best wishes for continued success. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions? The chair hears none, and both resolutions are adopted. It is my honor to recognize the senator from the 10th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this great body. This is much more than an honor today. It really is a tremendous opportunity on Black History Month to share with you 2 living African-American history makers. I am joined today by Supreme Court Justice Robert Benham, and I'm also joined by his best friend who thought he was coming up here to plan this event for Dr. Benham, for Justice Benham, and that is Dr. Thomas Coleman from DeKalb County. And it wasn't that long ago, several weeks ago, that I had an opportunity to have dinner planned by Dr. Coleman in honor of Justice Benham. And during that dinner, one of my sons made the comment to Justice Benham. His name was Janala Wilson, and he said to Justice Benham, "Thank you for that one vote," because that one vote made the difference in this young man's life. And I know that the over 30 years that Justice Benham has served as the first African-American Supreme Court Justice in this great state, he's made a difference in so many other lives as well. And I'm honored to say that I am one of those persons that he's made a difference in his life, because I've watched him from afar and seen the man, the character, the commitment, the sacrifice, and the service to this great state that he has exhibited from the bench, and not just being the first African-American, but also serving as Chief Justice from 1995 to 2001. You know, I asked his wife, tell me something funny I can share with Justice Benham. And she said, Senator, those are private moments. But let me tell you about Justice Benham. He said, well, all of them are funny because we've been together for over 50 years. He is, in fact, a guardian of this nation's freedom and liberty, not just in Georgia, but in the United States, an Army reservist valiantly and courageously protecting his fellow Americans, and he also obtained the rank of captain. As a champion of justice, he is a member of the American Judicature Society, and I hope I got that right, the Lawyers Club of Atlanta, the National Criminal Justice Association, and the Georgia Bar Association. You see, to us, Justice Benham really doesn't need an introduction because we all know him well. And Governor, with your permission, I would like to ask one of our own to come and say a few words about Justice Benham, and then I would like to introduce Justice Benham, and then Dr. Coleman, please.
Thank you, Senator. Coming from Bartow County and Cartersville, we've got many heroes that have come out of there. And one of the men that we're the most proud of is Justice Benham. You see Justice Benham at a restaurant or in the street or church or wherever you might see him is unassuming. But the one thing you know about Justice Benham, people respect him. It doesn't matter where you come from, what walk of life, where you're on a political spectrum. When you bring his name up, the reverence, integrity, character from this man reigns true. And so from our county and from our city, we just want to extend to Justice Benham how much we appreciate how he served not only our community well, but the state and the entire country.
Thank you very much for those generous, though undeserved, but much appreciated introduction. I was worried about coming here today, not about what I would say, but considering the height of this podium, I was worried that you might not be able to see me. So I've overcome the biggest hurdle I had planned to encounter today. Thank you for all of the wonderful work that you do over the years and what you do in terms of legislation in the state. And I thank you on behalf of the many lawyers who have had this opportunity, some of which have not been lawyers, but just public servants. But it has been a real pleasure because I came here a long time ago. I came here as a governor's intern, and that's been almost 30 years ago. I won't say how long I've been a lawyer because it would unduly infringe on my wife's age count. But I want you to know she's my young bride. And I was not her dad's choice to be her wife. But over the last 50 years, honey, have I earned a right to be kept? All right. I just got the affirmative answer I needed. I was a little worried, but I thought if I asked her in public, there was a better chance that she'd say, all right, I'll keep it. But thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you have done over the years, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to serve, because in America, when you serve your fellow man, that is the essence of a democracy. So I appreciate it, and I thank you for the recognition. I thank my wife for being seen with me in public, and I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
And with the President's Chamber's permission, I would like to introduce a good friend who made this trip today, who was in on this with me. Her name is Donna Scribbling Coleman, the Solicitor General in DeKalb County, and also the daughter of Dr. Coleman. Please come forward.
First of all, thank you. Thank you, Governor, for having me here today and for allowing me to speak to you all today. And thank you to especially the senators from DeKalb County for allowing me to speak here today. I am Donna Coleman Stribling. I am the Solicitor General in DeKalb. And when I usually introduce myself to people, the next thing I've learned to say is, by the way, I'm Tom Coleman's daughter. And initially, you know, it's not one of those statements that you naturally would say. But it's funny how when I say it, I get a completely different reaction. I hear people say, oh, I've known your father for many years. Or your father has done this for me. Or your father took my phone call. Or your father assisted me 25 years ago on a project I was working on. When I ran for office in 2016, I realized then, I knew the impact, but I realized how many other people knew the impact of the work my father had done. So I said, uh-oh, because I'm afraid that he didn't know. He knew nothing about this. He knew that he was coming here for Justice Benham. He did not know he was coming here to be honored himself. But I stand here, and it is truly a privilege to stand before you and tell you just a little bit, and I'll just take another moment to tell you a little bit about the work that he's always done. First, he served as a Air Forceman. He retired after 25 years in the Air Force and retired as a captain. He then went on to serve as a professor at numerous colleges and was eventually appointed by Governor Zell Miller to be the director of highway safety for the state of Georgia. When he was appointed, it was right before I went to college, and I went to school in New Orleans. And as you know, New Orleans is very popular for its hurricanes. And one of the first things my father and mother told me was, when you go down there, young lady, you do not get in a car and leave that state. Do you understand me? You got 30 miles outside of New Orleans to travel. So my second week of school in college, we had a hurricane. And I said, well, I better call my parents and tell them something. I don't know what's about to happen. And I had friends who were traveling to their hometown in Mississippi. Well, this was 1992, and there was no cell phone. So I called my home. My mother did not answer. I called my father's job. At that time, he was working for Governor Zell Miller. That meant I called here. Collect. And the executive assistant at that time accepted the call and said, well, Tom, your daughter is on the phone. She has called the governor's office. Collect. So I told him we were leaving. I told him where I would be. And he said, okay, be careful, be safe, and we'll make sure we get you a calling card soon. Do not ever call my job. The governor's office. Collect. I have learned from that point. And now sitting as an elected official, I can admit that I have called this office. Collect. But my dad is a rare breed. He's one of those people who you can call for advice today. He's one of those people who's answered every single call. When I talk to people about being in political office, he's put more people there and assisted more people and talked to them on the phone than I can count. But he is truly a humanitarian. He continues to give his life. He continues to serve. He serves as not only a father, a grandfather, a mentor to so many. He and his wife have been pillars in this community. My brother and I, my brother Jeff, who's standing in the back, he's also an attorney. We are so grateful for all the service he's done for not only this state, this county, and this nation. Thank you guys for recognizing my dad.
Thank you. I'm going to be very short because this was an absolute surprise. I had no idea this was going to happen, which is probably good too, so I can just stand up here and say thank you, and I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
stage for these two guys. Who is this? Oh, wow, thank you. Lieutenant Governor, this is a great public servant right here. There's not many people done more.
So I hear. All right, everybody, you can't see the camera can't see you. Thank you all. Elena, you guys come around here. Thank you guys. Have a great day. I'm gonna bring them Doctor of the Day this way. All right, we've now got our Doctor of the Day that we'd like to introduce to everybody. I'd like to recognize the Senator from the 42nd to introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's my honor this morning to introduce our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Daniel Lopez. Dr. Lopez is a family physician with Permanente. He graduated from Atlanta Medical Center Family Medicine in 2010 and has practiced medicine in both rural and metropolitan areas of Georgia. In addition to caring for patients, he serves in a leadership role that focuses on ensuring that medical care is high value, evidence-based, and mindful of the trust that patients put in their caregivers. Dr. Lopez lives in La Vista Park in DeKalb County. He is married, the father of 3 children, and enjoys running, mountain biking, hiking in the North Georgia mountains, and yoga. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Dr. Daniel Lopez.
Thank you, Senator Perrin, for the warm welcome. Mr. President, Senators, it's truly an honor to be part of this tradition to serve the Doctor of the Day. I just found out that was since probably the 70s, right? They have been running, so it's truly an honor also to serve the people of Georgia as part of the Southeast Permanente Medical Group. You all may not be familiar, but we are part of the biggest physician-owned, physician-led organization in Georgia. We have been around for the past 70 years. Right now, I and 800 members of our organization serve around 300,000 Georgians. And we work with you, Noble Insurance Company, to make your healthcare decisions. I'm family medicine by training, and the motto of my academy is we specialize on you. But also, I work part of 24 other specialties, working together as one to provide medical care. Like I said, 300,000 Georgians. For them, 40,000 are Georgia State employees. And we are very proud and honored to serve also 2,000 military retirees and their families as part of the TRICARE program. So I have to say thank you so much for having us, and thank you for what you do to allow doctors like us to do what we love. So be well and thrive. Thanks.
Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I rise today to recognize a friend. In the year 2020, we all hear about entrepreneurship, we hear about the gig economy, we hear about the advantages of marketing and branding and things of that nature. Well, a pioneer in all of those areas, which started many years ago before there were such slick names to describe each one of those types of occupations, was a good friend of mine, Michael Blackwell. Michael Blackwell was the kind of guy that when you met him somewhere, you felt like he had been your friend forever. He was an entrepreneur where if he was promoting Run DMC or Cheech and Chong in Columbus, Georgia, he was also promoting George Jones and Dwight Yoakam in Hiawassee. He always had his finger in the entrepreneurial pie, and everything he did was to make his community, Columbus, Georgia, a better place. He was a very large personality that carried a very large heart, and he shared it throughout the community. So I respectfully request a moment of silence today for an incredible businessman and friend, Michael Blackwell.
Senators requested us to rise to our feet and to honor with a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I rise this morning on a point of personal privilege to do my little day of Black history. The state of Missouri versus Cecilia, a slave, Callaway County, Missouri, 1855. The defendant, Cecilia, the charge, murder. The verdict, guilty. The sentence, death by hanging. Remember, Cecilia, a 19-year-old enslaved Black woman, murdered her master after he tried to sexually assault her. Missouri law allowed a woman to use force when in imminent danger of forced sexual intercourse. But Judge William Hall ruled that an enslaved woman had no right to refuse her master. Remember Annette Butler of Tylertown, Mississippi, who on May 13, 1956, was kidnapped and assaulted by 4 white men. Although the accused men confessed to assaulting their 16-year-old Annette, they were acquitted because they believed death was too harsh for raping a Black girl. Remember Reese Taylor of Abbeville, Alabama, who in 1945 was sexually assaulted by 6 white men and furthermore failed by all-white jury refused to indict their peers. The legal and social double standards that allow white men to commit sexual violence against Black women with impunity, while the most baseless fear of sexual contact between a Black man and a white woman resulted in deadly violence, continued well after emancipation. For generations of Black women, racial terror included the constant threat of sexual assault. Black women's resistance to rationalize sexual exploitation helped birth the activism that fuels the civil rights movement. If it weren't for their ultimate sacrifice, only a few of us would be in this room right now. For that, we remember and honor all of them. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week, as the budget subcommittees continue our work on the spending proposal sent to us from the House, I would like to remind everyone of a fact lingering right under the surface as we prepare our budget. A whole generation of Georgia public school students have borne the brunt of a vicious austerity program and its impact will not disappear instantly. Our children have had larger class sizes and less resources than the General Assembly itself had pledged to them. Now, as we spend the session talking about where we can find a few places to cut back, to afford another tax cut as revenues dwindle, it isn't a leap for me to fear that we might repeat the past. That would be a huge mistake for us, and I'm hopeful that we are wise enough to not head in that direction. We must invest in our schools and our students so that they are truly prepared for the 21st century economy when they graduate. We must renew our commitment to public education, which is the true provider of opportunity in our society and the key to our health as a nation. Let's make certain that we carry out the work of the people of this great state with great care, especially for our schools and for our students. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seems all too regular now, but we have another tragedy that we need to talk about, and that is we lost Angie Townsend this weekend. 23 years as a parapro up in Bartow County, and unfortunately someone came through an intersection and she lost her life tragically. All teachers are very special to us in Bartow County and Cartersville, but this one's very special. In fact, the name the students gave her was Mom. And there's a reason for that. And I won't go into those details, but she loved all children, regardless of where they're at, and many students came to her, and she was the only mom they really had. So, Mr. President, if we can have a moment of silence for Angie's family, I would appreciate it.
Senators ask that we rise to our feet and offer a moment of silence, please.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Members, just to let you know on another somber note, State Representative Mickey Stevens lost his granddaughter late last night. As you know, State Senator Mickey Stevens is from Savannah, Georgia, has gone through a lot of tragedy in his life. He lost his leg last year, and he's dealing with that. And we look forward to having him back in the General Assembly in the very near future. But I'll ask that we stand and have a moment of silence for the loss of State Representative Mickey Stevens' granddaughter.
Senators ask that we rise and offer up a moment of silence, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. All right, you've got a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to withdraw Senate Bill 358 from the Government Oversight Committee and commit it to the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee.
Ms. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 358.
Senate Bill number 358 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state symbols so as to designate the muscadine grape as the official state grape, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator, is both chairmen in agreement with this move?
I meant to state that a second ago. I've spoken to both committee chairs, and both committee chairs agree.
Thank you for that. Is there objection to moving Senate Bill 358 from government oversight to agriculture? The chair sees none, and it is so. For what purpose does the majority leader rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 302 be engrossed.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 302?
Senate Bill number 302 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 28 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to fiscal bills generally, so as to provide for independent economic analysis to be procured by the Office of Planning and Budget for certain tax benefits upon request by the chairpersons of the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Committee to provide for a short title and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority leader has moved that Senate Bill 302 be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the majority leader like to speak to his motion? He waves. Would the minority leader would like to speak to his objection?
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I rise to remind everyone why these are important issues that we should discuss and have the ability to amend if we think that they should be improved on. You know, number one, we've only had about 15 bills and 14 Senate bills, a House bill, and a resolution on the floor. We have time to work on issues. That's one point. Now, I know finance bills are important bills, and people will say that we should try to get these done correctly in the committees, and that's the best place to do the work. I don't disagree. And I think that the ability to amend on the floor should be respected and used sparingly. But it's an ability that helps us improve legislation for the citizens of Georgia. And that by taking away that privilege, you are not doing the service that the people of Georgia have sent you for, to make sure that we pass the best product possible. So I would ask you not to approve and not to support this motion, not to prove any engrossment, unless there is an overwhelming reason to. We basically are in a posture now that every bill that comes out of finance is engrossed. And that's a bad posture to be in. This bill, for instance, you know, I might raise issue with the wording of, you know, it mentions that the economic analysis shall be limited to a good faith estimate. That wording might be improved or different. You know, it limits the amount that the Ways and Means shares and Senate Finance share can ask for evaluations to 5. That possibly could be discussed and improved upon. It also doesn't allow the minority party to make any request for an analysis. Wouldn't it be appropriate to allow another perspective to come to the table and the minority leader be able to request an analysis of one category? Those are issues that really, since we can't amend, will be almost meaningless to debate up here. And that's why I think each time we have these engrossments, we should only act on them if the majority leader can come to the well and tell us a specific reason why it is necessary. Another factor that I think you need to be aware of is while 37% of this chamber has a minority party member, only about 23% of the Finance Committee does. These bills go through the Finance Committee. We don't have the ability to amend those when we only have 3 out of 13 members. We're sadly underrepresented. That's not fair if every bill coming out of that committee is going to be engrossed and we're going to be prevented from having an opportunity to amend them on the floor. So it is important that we consider these issues. It's important that you as a majority party allow as much openness and debate and not be afraid of the political process as possible. And I'm really getting to the well here today, or coming to the well here today, to ask the majority party to only use the engrossment process when absolutely necessary, and to make sure that you reflect on it and don't use it just as an automatic tool to limit
debate, or the political consequences of voting on an amendment. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well if there's no questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? The chair sees none. Would the majority leader like to close debate?
No, Mr. President, I'll let that one ride this time. Thank you.
The majority leader has waived. All right, we're going to go to the machine on this. All those in favor of the motion to engross will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 34, the nays are 20, and this motion has prevailed. And Senate Bill, just lost my place here. Senate Bill 302 is engrossed. All right, we're going to go on to the rules calendar. We are now on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 123?
Senate Bill number 123 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to waste management so as to eliminate the coal ash surcharge imposed by host local governments regarding municipal solid waste disposal facilities operated by private enterprise and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 4th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Environment recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Harper, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 123, a bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 12839 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to waste management cost reimbursement and surcharges so as to remove provisions relating to coal combustion residual surcharges and their disbursement for certain expenditures and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to speak to Senate Bill 123.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the committee. In just a few minutes, you will be able to vote to stop the subsidy of coal ash in the state of Georgia. And I say subsidy because right now, if you are landfills operated by private enterprises for a host community can charge, are required to charge $2.50 for a ton for materials brought to that landfill. But for coal ash and slag and other materials generated by coal burning facilities, they charge only $1. And this bill corrects that, and it raises that charge to $2.50. And the hope is that this will help Georgia stop from being a repository for coal ash that's generated here as well as other places. It also removes a prohibition that prevents all of those fees that are generated to be used to assist those counties and all of their operations within that area. Mr. President, it's a pretty simple bill. I'll be glad to yield to any questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Before I yield the well, I did want to say hello to someone who's dear to me who's watching us, the debate today, and that's Anna Catherine, my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. The question's on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage to the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 359?
Senate Bill number 359 by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 33 of the Fishing Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance so as to provide for certain consumer protections against surprise billing, to provide mechanisms to resolve payment disputes between insurers and out-of-network providers regarding the provision of health care services, to require the department to provide for the maintenance of an all-payer health claims database, to provide for in-network cost-sharing amounts in health care plan contracts, to establish an arbitration process, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 19th, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectively submitted by Senator Watson of the first chair. Mr. President, the Health and Human Services Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 359. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 33 of the Fishing Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance so as to provide for certain consumer protections against surprise billing, to provide for a short title, to provide for applicability, to provide for definitions, to provide for mechanisms to resolve payment disputes between insurers and out-of-network providers regarding the provision of healthcare services, to require the department to provide for the maintenance of an all-payer health claims database, to establish an arbitration process, and for other purposes. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to speak to Senate Bill 359.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here
Senator, please suspend for a minute. If I could get this chamber's attention, I can assure you that this is a very serious matter that the senator is going to present that 11 million Georgians care about. Proceed.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I will say some people have said, because this has been around for a couple of 3 years, that it's a story of two old stubborn white men who somehow found a way to agree. And I'll get to that story in a minute. But I do want to say, while we're talking about some bad moments in health care, there are good moments in health care. I had one this weekend. I went back and I took 48 hours of call at my hospital. Saturday morning, there was a 76-year-old African-American man there that had a bad fall. He had a swelling in his brain that was going inward, what we call a subdural hematoma, and we needed to fix him. He probably had 60 family members there, pastor, friends, children, grandchildren, all praying over him. And at one point I was thinking we really need to get going on the surgery, but I certainly didn't interrupt that. But at the end of it, when he came out and everything was great and he was in really good shape, his wife, who had been by his side, I brought her back in there because I said, look, you're not supposed to come back here in recovery, but he is neurologically perfect. He's great. And the bureaucrats are all at home on Saturday morning, so come back here with me and see your husband. Watching the two of them there, cheek to cheek, hug each other and smile, knowing that there will come a day when they'll be separated from each other temporarily, but it wasn't going to be today, is a great moment. What we don't need from those moments is for them to come up months later with bills that devastate them, that cause problems. And almost half of Americans have experienced a surprise bill. 2/3 of the people worrying about being able to pay a bill, and medical bills are the #1 reason for bankruptcy in the state of Georgia. 1 in 6 ER visits and inpatient stays result in a surprise bill. 78% of the public have demanded that we do something about it. I think the other 22% just haven't seen it yet, or they would be doing the same thing. So Chairman Richard Smith and I worked on this and sort of disagreed for the last couple of years. I had a bill, he had a bill. We locked in over it. He probably didn't think great things about me or me about him, but Andy Lord, a lobbyist with Georgia Watch, said, we need to get you two guys together and talk about common things that you agree on, not differences, and brought in 3 Georgetown professors that study this all over the country. I welcome the opportunity for these Georgetown professors to show them that I was right, and he probably said the same thing. And we got them together, and they said, you know, there's really not a perfect number. that solves all the issues and the complexities of healthcare, but there's a different way that it's done. And it's been successful in New York, and it's been successful in Texas. And we both agreed to it. After one session, we said, this is the right way to go. And we began working on a common bill, and we have a bill that will be presented in the House committee today that is the exact same bill that's been presented here by Chairman Lee Hawkins, who is back in my area today. Richard Smith became Rules Chair. He turned it over to Lee. Lee is Budget and Fiscal Oversight and the dentist, and a common kindred of numbers and health care with me. And we began work on this. We were joined by a lot of help from the Lieutenant Governor's staff, Mike Dudgeon and Regina Quick. The Governor's staff, Ryan Loke, put in many, many hours on this, as well as Stuart Wilkinson and Mark Hamilton, to bring this about. And we looked at a system that would have an arbitration in the end as a final last step. And I told them I want a system where they both presented a number, the provider and the insurer, and then the arbitrator picked what was a fair number. And they said, no, you really don't want to do that. And I said, well, what works? And they said baseball-style arbitration, where the arbitrator has to pick one of the two numbers that are presented, because we found that the numbers, both sides want their number to be picked. The numbers come in really close, and they're so close, in fact, that in most cases, they go ahead and make an agreement, and there's not arbitration. So with this system in place, we begin working more with, at some point, the Medical Association of Georgia, the insurers, the Georgia Hospital Association, nurses organizations, all who support this bill today as it is. It says that in an emergency situation, the consumer, the patient, will not be given a surprise bill. It will be worked out between the insurer and the provider, and that the patient will be held harmless. In a non-emergency but medically necessary situation, there's also provisions to hold them harmless when they get caught in this. And also, there's going to be a separate page for non-emergency elective situations where they know somebody's out of network, but they want that particular person to do it, and they know it's not in their insurance network, where they sign and say, we're aware of this. In that case, it's not a surprise bill. They know what's coming to them. It sets up a prompt and fair starting payment, which they can then negotiate over for 30 days, and if they can't come to an agreement, they can then eventually go to an arbitration, which is limited in time and limited to 20 pages, a very focused, short time frame to do it, and it says you can bundle these together and look at multiple cases that are the same type of case together. And eventually it would get to a very quick form of arbitration. As was mentioned, we want an all claims payer database. We know that's a budget item, and we also know that it may not be ready by the time this is done, but the Commissioner of Insurance will have latitude to use verifiable data, and we've been given assurances from some of our work on the Medicaid waivers that those numbers are available from that work, that we can get to those numbers. It also says that any credit reporting is not allowed to be put on a consumer's credit report for a surprise billing situation. I would think that goes without saying since we're holding them harmless, but sometimes you got to say it anyway, and so we did in the bill. And also says that if there's a pattern of abuse by anybody, that the Commissioner of Insurance will have that reported to the appropriate agency, and there's a very short time frame for dealing with these as well. This is a very carefully crafted solution with many, many hours of work by the governor's staff, Lieutenant Governor's staff, the House and the Senate, the Medical Association of Georgia, Georgia Hospital Association, and our insurers. And I would urge that you vote on this as it is with no amendments, as we're trying to keep these bills exactly the same between the two bodies, and we've learned that a sentence here or there can drastically alter things. With that, I urge everyone's favorable consideration of this, and that we can finally get the consumer out of the middle. I will throw one caveat in there, is that the ERISA plans are not covered by this, the self-funded large company plans, simply because we have no legal authority to. Those ERISA came about in 1972, and then different, really to deal more with pensions than this, but then in 2016, the Supreme Court said that states had no jurisdiction over these plans. There's another Chuck in the U.S. Senate that's Chairman of Finance, Chuck Grassley. He's got a bipartisan bill that he's working on this as well, and I hope that the federal government will solve it for these plans, as we simply have no method of doing so. With that, Mr. President, I will yield for any questions.
You have no questions.
Thanks. I guess I covered it pretty well, or everyone's tired of me talking one, but I do appreciate the Senate's support in this over the years.
Chair recognizes the minority leader to speak to the measure.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I rise to thank the chairman of the committee for working with members of my caucus to make sure this bill addresses the concerns of their constituents. It's an excellent piece of legislation, and I appreciate the hard work that's been done by all members of this body. Urge your adoption of the Senate bill. Yield the well if there's any questions.
Senator, you have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question now is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I'd like to personally thank the senator from the 52nd for his hard work on this. Thank you very much, Senator. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 310?
Senate Bill 310 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Title 43 of the OCGA relating to professions and businesses so as to provide for the regulation of certain professions, to change certain provisions relating to certain boxing, wrestling, and martial arts associations and federations, to revise the definition, to change the applicability of certain provisions as to matches, contests, or exhibitions, to provide for the profession of a professional structural engineer, to provide for definitions, to provide for continuing education requirements, to provide for unlawful practices, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 4th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Cowsert, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 310, a bill to be titled an act to amend Title 43 of the OCGA relating to professions and businesses so as to provide for the profession of professional structural engineer, provide for definitions, to provide for continued education requirements, to provide for unlawful practices, to provide for the issuance of certificates of registration for such professionals, and for other purposes. That completes order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from Ocilla to speak to Senate Bill 310.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate Bill 310, as passed out of Senate Regulated Industries, is similar to House Bill 516, which this body passed last year. I will go ahead and speak to why we are where we are. The governor vetoed House Bill 516, but the reason the governor vetoed House Bill 516, and in the veto statement, along with a number of other bills that he vetoed, because they did not go through the review by the Georgia Occupational Regulation Review Council. This past fall, House Bill 516 went through GORC, and GORC gave this particular provision a thumbs up. Our own senator from the 52nd is a part of that review council, and through their review, they suggested that House Bill 516, as passed last year, be reintroduced and pass again this year. So I introduced that as Senate Bill 310, and it creates the PESC, or Professional Engineer, Structural Engineer designation. This designation has been in place since 2011. The PELS board, or the Professional Engineering Land Surveyors Board that oversees PEs, instituted it, and for a point of clarification, there is a special test to get that designation. You have to take a 16-hour exam to get the PESC designation, where you only have to take an 8-hour exam to get the regular PE designation under the engineering certification. Mr. President, it basically is pretty simple in what this bill is attempting to do, and creating a level playing field in regards to other states that already have the PESC designation. And if there are no questions, Mr. President, I would appreciate your support. I will yield the will.
You have a few questions from your colleagues.
I'll be happy to take it.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th. He's changed his mind. He wants to speak to the measure. Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I will yield.
Can you tell me exactly what we're doing on lines 51 through 56?
Give me just a second.
When we're striking through International Sport Kickboxing and Karate Association?
That is, you're not looking at the substitute. That was taken out in the substitute. Look at the green one.
Okay, no further questions.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th to speak to the measure.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of times in the world where you make a fight and you get beat. It's only appropriate that this bill started out as a mixed martial arts fighting bill. Said, for this purpose today, I want to ask my colleagues to understand I'm trying to fight for the citizens of Georgia and their hard-earned money. There's nothing in Georgia law that prevents a structural engineer in Georgia that's practicing as a structural engineer from getting licensed in any of the other states across the nation that license this. The last time I checked, there were 11 states that licensed structural engineers. When I start to look at where we're at, this doesn't protect any citizen in Georgia from having a bad engineering job. Many years ago, I sat on the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers board. Said I watched some of the things that go on in that board, and I'm all for protecting the citizens of Georgia. We don't want somebody that's unqualified doing structural engineering work. I have no problem with my senator from the 7th in trying to make sure that we're perpetuating the profession of engineering. I don't want to see the engineering profession picked apart, but worse yet, I don't want to see our citizens paying for something that they're getting no benefit for. In this bill, said and I want you to understand, we've already spelled out in state law and in our rules and regs what structural engineers and what type of structures they can work on. This bill came down to a day 40 fight on the floor last year. Unfortunately, I lost that fight. The citizens of Georgia were saved by our governor when he vetoed the bill. Said I'll ask you to look at this legislation and realize that it doesn't do anything to perpetuate better engineers or to save taxpayers' money from any citizen of Georgia. I'll ask you to vote no on this bill. I appreciate the senator from the 7th bringing the bill, and I know he's worked diligently to try to get this bill passed. For me, I want to try to make sure that we fight for the citizens of Georgia in saving their resources on engineering costs, because only thing this bill will do is drive up the cost of engineering for all of our Georgia citizens. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well if there are no questions.
You have a question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Does the chairman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'm very concerned about fiscal responsibility in the state, and I'm trying to understand how this is costing the taxpayers money.
What this will do is this bill will take good civil engineers that are qualified to do work in Georgia and make them doubt what their abilities are. Said when they won't bid on a job that they're eligible to do and licensed to do in Georgia, because they say, well, do I have to be a structural engineer to do that? And so what's going to happen is they're not going to have competitive bids on work that civil engineers are licensed to do. I'm not a big fan, and my president said here behind me is a graduate of that institute down on North Avenue. But I will tell you this.
Alumni.
Yes, sir. Said but for me, they don't offer a degree in structural engineering. They only offer degrees in civil engineering. We license civil engineers in this state to address our issues, and then when you want to sit for the exam, you can sit for the structural engineering exam. My senator from the 7th is correct. You can get the SE designation as a structural engineer here to do a very narrow scope of things. Cable bridges is an example of a structural engineer required license. Said what I'm saying is that you're going to take good civil engineers that are not going to bid on work, and the cost of engineering is going to go up.
Do you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
It's my understanding that the board that oversees engineers and those powers that be feel that this designation is necessary for us to be competitive with other states. What's your response to that argument?
The Pels board is correct in that we need a structural engineering designation to do certain complex structures, and they've designated that in their rules. What the Pels board is not here to tell you, and I'm here to make sure you understand, having a licensed structural engineer in Georgia doesn't change the engineering requirements, doesn't put any more burden on the engineer. What it does do is it makes the Georgia engineer where they can do a marketing ploy to other states. What I'm telling you the correct answer is, if another state wants to have a licensed structural engineer in that state to do work, go take and get their license in another state. We don't require it in Georgia, and we shouldn't, because it's going to drive up the cost of engineering. If you want to go to Illinois, Illinois was the first state that required structural engineering. If you want to do work in Illinois, you have to sit for their structural engineer exam. If you want to market yourself to Illinois, great, go do that. But that doesn't help our Georgia taxpayers and our Georgia folks that are needing good engineers.
May you further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's no reciprocity between these states? Is that also true?
There is reciprocity. If you take the structural engineering exam, you can go get licensed in another state. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have structural engineers in Georgia, but if we license them special, the only reason we're doing that is so they can market to other states. We need structural engineers that have met certain requirements and passed the national test. But by designating them as such, all we're doing is driving up the cost of engineers for our Georgia citizens.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair sees none. The chair will recognize the senator from the 7th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I do respect my good friend from the 47th, and I respect his opinions, and I appreciate his passion. I will just say that he and I disagree. I do not believe that this increases the cost of engineering. In fact, once the Pels Board, at no time pre or post the PESE designation that the Pels Board had initiated themselves, has the cost of engineering risen. I think that's an important designation, an important point to make whenever you take this into account, whenever you look to cast your vote on this. So obviously, I would appreciate your support. I would appreciate your vote. All the engineering groups in our state, including the Pels Board and as the senator from the 48th mentioned, they do support this. They are behind it. They are for it. I would appreciate your vote as well. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
All right, the question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the senator from the 47th rise?
Mr. Chairman, is it not true that passing this bill will drive up the cost of building in Georgia? And as Chairman of Economic Development, we want to make sure our economy is strong.
Certain
and
each
not
and every
burdened
member
with
can make
costs.
that decision on their own. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 8. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption of Senate Bill 302.
Senate Bill number 302 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 28 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to fiscal bills generally so as to provide for independent economic analyses to be procured by the Office of Planning and Budget for certain tax benefits upon request by the chairpersons of the House Committee on Ways and Means, on the Senate Finance Committee, and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 3rd, 2020, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectively submitted by Senator Huffstetler, Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Finance Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 302. A bill to be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 28 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to fiscal bills generally, so as to provide for independent economic analyses to be procured by the Office of Planning and Budget for certain tax benefits upon request by the chairpersons of the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Committee, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th to speak to Senate Bill 302.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I bring before you today the Tax Credit Return on Investment Act of 2020. Let me begin with a little history. A few years ago, this body passed a Senate study committee to look at the process and several tax exemptions and credits by which we had currently in law. That committee met all over the state of Georgia, meeting with different constituencies and those who have been leveraging those tax credits. At the end of that, in our final report, we had found that out of the 6 credits that we had examined, 3 of them were providing a phenomenal return on investment, something each one of us would be proud of from the state level, and really the same way that we would operate our homes and our businesses. And we found 3 that were not effective, and that very next session, we eliminated those from the Georgia Code. In addition to those recommendations, we decided a process needed to be put in place to begin regularly measuring each one of those tax credits and exemptions. And we passed legislation last year in this body to do just that. That bill did pass the Senate and the House, but was ultimately vetoed by the governor, and I want to publicly thank him for vetoing it, because he found a deficiency in that bill that needed to be corrected. And what we have in front of you now is a much perfected bill and a better way for us in order to improve the return and make sure we have the right transparency in government. So let me provide some details as to what this bill does. First, it allows the chairman of Ways and Means in the House and our chairman of Finance to select 5 bills each that are either proposed legislation or existing law to have a full economic analysis completed on it. Upon completion of those, they will be sent reports back to our Senate and the House Budget Office so we can all review that analysis and make sure as we move forward that we are looking at those of whether we want to extend those, we want to end those, or modify them in order to have the best results for Georgia. I believe this will provide great transparency to our constituents as well. Mr. President, that is a summary of what the bill does. I believe this is great fiscal policy for us, and I would ask everyone's favorable consideration and yield if there are any questions.
You have a couple questions. The chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Just briefly, what are the changes between last year's version and this?
That's an excellent question. The changes are found on line 27 to be using more independent auditors as opposed to using the current state auditor to have that third-party look at the tax credit analysis.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes, Senator.
Senator, I'm looking on line 17, and I understand that this economic analysis can be performed up to 5 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you mind sharing with us why 5 years versus 10 years as an example?
That's a great question, Senator. What we had found during the study committee is it takes about 3.5 to 4 years to compile the information by using the different sources. So looking back 5 years gives us a chance to take that snapshot in a more real time to provide what happened during that window. Going back any further sometimes didn't give us too much legacy data. We wanted to keep it more focused, but we also knew that 5 years was the sweet spot of having the data before something might be renewed again. And it's been the lead of this body to put a sunset on almost all of our tax exemptions to be now 5 years in order to stay consistent with that methodology.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Senator, I'm looking at on line 25, and it says the Senate Finance Committee may. Can you explain to me why it says may instead of shall?
Another great question. Our thought was, in many years from now, we may have caught up with our economic analysis and hopefully been doing them prior to bills even starting, that the chair at that time may decide that they only need 4 to be done. So it really will fall under the chair's disposition to make that call. But I know our chairman of finance will be working with the committee in order to get our feedback to determine what the best ones to analyze would be.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank
Does
you, Mr. President.
any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question now being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 319?
Senate Bill number 319 by Senator Ginn of the 47th and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 5 of Chapter 5 of Title 12 of the Fisheries Code of Georgia annotated relating to rivers and river basins relative to dam safety so as to prohibit the building of inhabitable structures in the inundation zone of a Category 2 dam without prior certification from an engineer of record, to provide for an engineer of record to perform and certify a breach analysis when inhabitable structures already exist in the inundation zone of a Category 2 dam and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 4th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment recommends that this bill do pass. Respectively submitted by Senator Harper, Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th to speak to Senate Bill 319.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to first clarify one thing with you. When I say the word D-A-M, that's exactly how I want you to spell it. This is a good damn bill, said they, and I'll need your help in passing it to save our citizens and natural resources. One of the things that this bill passed out of committee unanimously, it has the support of the Georgia Home Builders Association, the Georgia Realtors, ACCG, and GMA. It is a bill that I have worked on for now 8 years. Back, I had a constituent, when I first got elected, said they came to me and wanted to build a house across from a lake. And they said, hey, you know, what's going on with this? Fast forward, said we brought that constituent down here, met with Governor Deal. He saw what a dam problem it was. Said and he told me, he said, Senator Ginn, we're going to work to reallocate those funds to the right direction. I looked at where we're at. Believe it or not, the state owns 357 dams. This bill only addresses the Category 2, which is a low hazard dam. And what this bill actually does is to ensure that we don't eliminate a lot of dams here in Georgia. As y'all may recognize, dams provide a lot of benefits to our Georgia citizens in better water quality, fisheries, and recreation. And so when we start looking at my intent, I wanted to try to balance the dam owner's property with the downstream owner's property. You know, the worst thing in the world is to build in an area where you wouldn't know that if the dam were to fail, then you'd have a problem. What this bill does is if a Category 2 dam owner, which is a low hazard dam, does the breach analysis, they can do so and put the world on notice, hey, here's what happens if that dam fails. The only thing that we're doing is similar to what you might see down on the coast with a hurricane. You build to a higher standard. You put in hurricane straps in your construction. This would allow somebody to have good use of their property. What they're going to do is they're actually going to build to a higher standard. We're working with the Department of Community Affairs to come up with those building requirements and what we need to protect the citizens of Georgia. The bill itself is pretty simple. Said as I look at I'm working with our state EPD folks and where we need to go forward. When I start to work on the bill, I know that the senator from the 23rd had one of his constituents to reach out to me. The senator from the 17th. This is a widespread problem all across Georgia. And I started to find out, wow, there's a lot of homeowners associations out there that own these Category 2 dams. Said what we want to try to do is work to protect the lives of those downstream and at the same time protect their property rights interest. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well and I'll ask for my colleagues to give me favorable consideration on a dam bill.
You have a couple of questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. You mentioned that this only applies to Category 2 dams, and you may have called it a low hazard dam. Could you maybe define that a little bit more for us?
Well, in Georgia, we have, by definition, a dam has to be at least a impoundment of water above 25 feet in height and above 100 acre feet. The only thing that happens between a Category 1 and a Category 2 is a Category 2 dam doesn't have a structure below it that would pose an imminent loss of life for a resident down below. If you take that same dam and you put a structure down below it that's not hardened, it becomes a Category 1. So if the dam's already a Category 1, this legislation does not apply. It only applies to those that are Category 2. And I know down in your neck of the woods, it's probably hard to find 25 feet of dirt in one pile.
Oh, you're exactly right about that. Will you yield for one more question?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any cost estimates of how much more it would cost to build a house to harden it to withstand a breach in the dam?
And typically, that's going to depend on how the house would sit in that structure. But I'll give you an example. I doubt that anybody here lives in a house that could withstand a 30-inch wave of water coming at 5 feet per second. Most houses would be swept away. An easy remedy for that would be to come in and build a little bit higher slab, raise it, put dirt up, so that you're still in the same area, you're still right where you want to be, but your house sits up a little higher, thus creating a berth around that wave of water to dissipate that energy. And your house, in your middle of the night when you're sitting there asleep, you're not washed away or killed by a dam that would breach.
So one more question. Will you yield for one more? So then that would be similar to what we do on the coast, where if you build in a flood zone, you have to elevate the structure.
Yes, sir. Very similar principle.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
I was just trying to figure out why I should vote for your damn bill. But I like your explanation, so I'll vote for it.
Thank you. My good friend from the 33rd said it's a good damn bill, and it is raining outside, and one of the things we have to take into consideration, this is one of those things. When the rain comes, we know that sometimes there's a dam that breaks. So if there are no other questions, Mr. President,
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
My instincts tell me that you used that word more than you needed to during your presentation. Hopefully you let some stress off. Any other senators wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I wanted to take a brief second of personal privilege here to personally thank our doorkeepers as I stand here and watch how hard you guys continue to work and your professionalism. Just want to personally thank you for what you're doing each and every day. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of Senate Bill 341?
Senate Bill number 341 by Senator Roberts of the 29th and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 35 of the Fishery Code of Georgia annotated relating to employment and training of peace officers so as to provide for reemployment of retired peace officers and correctional officers during disasters and emergencies, to provide for definitions, to provide for training and qualifications, to provide for immunities and powers of arrest, to provide for compensation, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. Mr. President, on February 19th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Albers, Chair. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th to present Senate Bill 341.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I rise today and ask for your support in Senate Bill 341. Several years ago, Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf shores of Mississippi, causing a tremendous amount of devastation. I'm sure you all remember the news reports when the levees gave way in New Orleans. At the time that was happening, myself and 21 other first responders were being dispatched to Mississippi to address the damage and to back up public safety in that area. Once we arrived down there, the devastation was something that none of us had ever experienced from Mother Nature before. One of the issues that happened was that the county jail that was down on the coast had been washed away, and all the inmates there had to be moved inland into the Pearl River County Jail. Myself and another team went into Pearl River County at 3 a.m. one morning upon our arrival and went to this jail that was now holding twice as many inmates as it was designed to hold. Riots were starting, and the 2 law enforcement officers that had been able to show up at that county jail were trying to manage things the best they could. So when our team showed up, we were able to support them, back them up, regain control of the county jail, and do what needed to be done to not only protect the citizens living in the community, but to protect the citizens who were currently incarcerated in that jail. This piece of legislation right here in the state of Georgia will handle one of the problems that we witnessed in Mississippi, and the problem that we had there was the fact that there was no backup plan if public safety officers could not respond, or if the disaster was of a magnitude that the current public safety officers on duty would have been overwhelmed. Luckily, we prevented a lot of issues there in Mississippi by being able to back up those first responders. So what this legislation would do would allow any law enforcement agency in the state of Georgia to maintain a database at their agency of retired certified law enforcement officers, whether they are just basic post-certified officers or advanced certified officers such as bomb techs and other types that could respond in certain disasters. This legislation would also allow during certain major events such as the Super Bowl that was here in Atlanta to give the law enforcement agencies the opportunity to bring in retired qualified law enforcement officers to backfill in for those that needed to work the event. So you'd have a lot of very qualified officers out directing traffic and taking care of the smaller issues, while those who are on the job full-time already would be able to handle the primary responsibilities. This legislation not only would strengthen public safety throughout the state of Georgia, but I think it would help fill the gap that we're currently having on recruitment and retention in law enforcement during these times. I ask for your support and ask that you would please vote for this very good piece of legislation. And Mr. President, I'll answer any questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Unless you got a full of mullis. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Tuesday, 25 February 2020.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read any announcements?
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 cap. Insurance and Labor will meet in 310 CLOB at 1 p.m. Finance will meet in MES 1 at 1 p.m. Agriculture and Natural Resources Appropriation Subcommittee will meet in 450 cap at 1:30 p.m. Education and Youth will meet in 307 CLOB at 2 p.m. Public Safety will meet in MES 1 at 2 p.m. Health and Human Services will meet in 450 cap at 3 p.m. And Judiciary will meet in 307 CLOB at 4 p.m. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I've got an announcement. I want to invite everybody tonight to a Black History Month reception that I'm hosting along with the Pro Tem and Senator Jackson. It's going to be at Atlanta City Hall at 5:30, and I'd ask that if your schedule's available, that you join us there. Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th for an announcement.
This afternoon at 1:30, the Agriculture Subcommittee of Appropriations is meeting. We need to be sure and have a quorum at that meeting because they're going to take up the outdoor stewardship grant applications. The list that's going to be approved needs to be approved by that subcommittee. So if you're a member of the Agriculture Subcommittee of Appropriations, please make the meeting at 1:30 in room 450. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th for an announcement.
Thank you. I rise to ask all of you to join me in offering condolences to our Atlanta judge that was killed this weekend in a car accident at Cumberland Mall area. She was Judge Carlisle, and she was in 1989 appointed by Andrew Young right before he left as mayor, and she served until 2017 as a municipal court judge. So she went out for a day of shopping and unfortunately lost her life. She's age 65, and will you join me in a moment of silence for
Senators
Judge.
ask for a moment of silence. Please rise and offer a moment of silence.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for an announcement.
The Women's Legislative Caucus meets tomorrow on Tuesday. There was an error on the flyer on your desk. Thank you.
All right, the majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, February 25th, 2020 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. All on the motion, the ayes clearly have it, and the Senate stands adjourned tomorrow at 10 a.m. Have a good night.